Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If a Venerated Soul Reincarnated in Danmachi world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 11, Welcome to Orario. Belle Cranell noticed a gaze on her and turned her head to see a boy who seemed to be around her age staring at her. Although he was handsome, it was his enchanting purple eyes that captivated her, leaving her dazed. Hello, Belle said with a meek voice. The woman sitting next to her, who shared some of Belle's features, had white hair and wore a dark-themed dress. Up until now, her eyes had remained closed, but she opened them momentarily when she sensed Judas approaching. She had heterochromia, with her right eye green and her left gray. Althea raised a brow. There was someone this strong? Her senses were sharp and her instincts flawless. With a single glance, she had already identified Judas as a dangerous individual. Finding himself at the center of attention from the two white-haired women, he did not flinch. Instead, he gave Belle a small nod. Greetings. He sat across from them and said nothing further. His gaze shifted, sweeping over the other passengers, 2 men and 3 women. They were also staring back at him, but he paid them no mind and quickly laid down on the floor. He didn't waste his energy on unnecessary thoughts, such as why the protagonist had undergone a complete gender swap. He was far too tired to care, having not gotten a single ounce of sleep the previous night. Exhaustion weighed heavily on him, his eyelids drooping. He mumbled something inaudible and fell asleep the next second. Everyone in the carriage was a bit surprised by his behavior, but most minded their own business. Except for the 2 men, who tried to make moves on the women, only to be put to sleep by Althea, annoyed by the noise they were making. This guy is a bit weird, right, Auntie? Belle asked as she glanced at Judas, soundly asleep. Althea promptly smacked her on the head. Ouch! How many times do I have to tell you not to call me that? It makes me feel old. Call me Mother, Althea said with a cold glare. Belle shivered and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Althea then turned her attention back to the boy, eyes still closed, not from weakness, but because opening them was exhausting for her. Where did this brat come from? Someone this strong should already be well known. Althea was both surprised and wary. As a level 7, her strength placed her at the very peak among mortals of the lower world. This brat, he cast a barrier the moment he lay down. Not even a trace of mind was left behind. The others probably didn't notice a thing. Which familia does he belong to? She was tempted to rip open his shirt to see the felna on his back, but restrained herself. I'll get information about him once we reach Orario. She committed his face to memory. The ride continued smoothly from there. The usual tropes of bandit ambushes or a damsel in distress never appeared. How is he still sleeping in this condition? Everyone on the carriage wondered the same thing as they stared at Judas, who slept deeply and soundly. It was astonishing. Most of the road wasn't even paved. The majority of the path was nothing but a rough dirt track, riddled with bumps and holes. Remaining comfortable in such conditions was futile. Yet Judas slept like a log, unbothered by everything around him. We're here. We've arrived in Orario. The carriage driver shouted from outside. Mother, we're finally here, the city of heroes. Belle exclaimed with stars in her eyes, waking Judas from his slumber. Yawn. When Judas opened his eyes, everyone had already exited the carriage. Except for Belle and Althea. Would you like to join us? You look like you're the same age as me. Maybe we can search for a familia together. Belle offered with a pure smile, extending her hand. Judas felt the aura of a protagonist radiating off her, compelling him to take it. The charisma is off the charts. Even if the main character changed gender, a protagonist is still a protagonist, huh? It almost feels like I'm being dragged into her harem. He resisted, staring at her for a few seconds before shaking his head. Thank you for the offer, but I have my own arrangements. Oh, okay. Belle looked a little sullen, but quickly brightened again as she introduced herself. My name is Belle Crannel, and this is my mother, Althea. Althea didn't so much as move an inch, as if the conversation had nothing to do with her. My name is Judas Spade. It was nice to meet you. Judas replied, his gaze shifting to the woman behind Belle. She stood there in silence, as though her very presence could consume everything. The woman accompanying Belle, she's strong. At least a first-class adventurer, if not higher. Who is she? He had never seen her in the anime, yet her overwhelming presence was undeniable. Last I remember, Belle went to Orario alone after his grandfather died. Did my presence already change the timeline this much? Judas frowned, realizing the world had already diverged from the story he once knew. I'll be on my way, he said curtly and walked off. What? Did he just leave like that? Belle was left stunned by his abrupt exit. What a weirdo. I guess there really are all sorts of people in the world, huh? Belle scratched her face and chuckled awkwardly. Enough chit-chat. We should go as well. Althea reprimanded, pulling Belle along by the ear. Ow ow ow. Hey, let go. As the so-called center of the world, Orario was home to countless races and cultures. As expected, the line to enter the city gates was long. Yeah, I'm not waiting. Judas turned his body into mist. His physical form became transparent, undetectable, and untraceable unless someone specifically sought him out. To others, it was no different than a breeze passing by. Did someone sneak in? A guard frowned when he noticed a handful of coins suddenly appear in the toll box. Must have been the wind. He shrugged and returned to his post. After leaving the correct toll fee, Judas took his first steps into the City of Heroes. It's not as grand as I thought it would be. Of course, as someone who once lived on modern Earth, he had seen greater cities filled with skyscrapers and towers. But that giant tower is impressive. Is the Babel Tower taller than the World Tree? Judas wondered aloud, continuing his walk through the streets. But after a few minutes of sightseeing, he noticed something troubling. The elves. All of them are staring at me. I completely forgot about the influence of Estalon's power. It hadn't even been that long, yet he had already become the center of attention. Chapter 12, Rose Fanet. When all the nearby elves started staring at Judas, the other races soon took notice and looked in the same direction. Not even 5 minutes had passed and he had already attracted so many eyeballs to himself. I want to smack myself in the head. I've got to do something about this, or else these elves are never going to leave me alone. He shifted into mist form, disappearing from everyone's sight, which stunned the crowd. What? Where did he go? He just vanished. But the elves had a different reaction. Who was he? Why do I feel so fond of that human? Being around him felt like I had returned home to my forest, as if he was emitting a serene and peaceful atmosphere. That human gave off a feeling that makes me feel at ease. So strange. Rumors about a human boy who disappeared into a cloud of mist spread through some areas of Orario. Although such gossip would die down in a few days, it was a fact that Judas had already made his presence known. Looks like I'll have to be careful next time. In a random dark alley, free from any spying eyes, Judas' body materialized. He looked around to make sure no one was nearby, then closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the color of his eyes had changed from purple to gold. His whole view of the world shifted drastically. Everything was covered in colorful wisps of light, present on people's bodies and lingering in the air as well. This was life force, the fundamental energy of all living beings. Due to factors like age and race, the level of life energy varied between individuals. His eyes scanned the people in the area, with the exception of gods, everyone in his vision had varying degrees of colored light surrounding them. As expected, those with higher levels have more life energy compared to those with lower levels. Though races with long lifespans, like elves, naturally carry an abundant amount of it in their bodies. Judas looked at himself, and sure enough, what he saw was overwhelming. His aura towered as tall as Babel, completely dwarfing the auras of those around him. This was his own life energy, stacked with his aura of nature. The aura manifested as a soft, shimmering glow, resembling dappled sunlight filtering through forest canopies. When near elves, it subtly amplified their innate connection to nature, filling them with serenity and trust. Suppress. The giant aura shrank rapidly. What once rivaled the Tower of Babel was now reduced to the size of a small house. He looked at himself and nodded in approval. Unless an elf looks at me up close, I should be no different from any human in their eyes from now on. His eyes returned to normal, and he continued to wander the city. He didn't head for the guild right away, instead finding an inn to rest. I still haven't had enough sleep. There were visible bags under his eyes, and the sleep he had managed to snatch on the caravan hadn't been enough. After taking a shower, Judas threw himself onto the bed, his body sinking into the mattress. He closed his eyes as he slowly drifted to sleep. The faint crackle of fire filled his ears. At first, it was distant, soft, almost peaceful. Then came the screams. Men, women, children, voices he knew, crying out in agony. His heart raced as his vision twisted, colors bleeding into crimson. He was standing in the middle of the village square. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. He saw faces, people he'd once greeted every morning, reaching out to him for help. But when he tried to move, his legs refused to obey. His hands trembled, coated in soot and blood. "Judas! Help us!" He turned, but the voice was swallowed by fire. Their charred forms crawled toward him, empty eyes glowing through the smoke. "This is all your fault. You abandoned us. You left us to die." He fell to his knees, clutching his head. "No. I didn't mean." The world warped, and the flames began to take shape, mocking faces, whispering in cruel harmony. Judas jolted awake, gasping for breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Cold sweat drenched his body. He looked around the dimly lit room and exhaled shakily. Just a dream. No, not a dream. A memory that refused to fade. He sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. Let's just sleep and forget about it. That was how his first day in Ororio ended. Judas woke up at 4 in the morning. The sun had yet to rise, so he went outside for a jog. The guild won't be open for a while. I guess I'll exercise to pass the time. As he jogged, he passed by numerous shops, noting them down in his mind and familiarizing himself with the city. My magical prowess is already outstanding, but my physical abilities are lagging far behind. Without reinforcing myself with mana or strengthen myself with spells, I can't even beat a level 1 in a pure physical confrontation. He was already aware of his weakness. He was a human with no distinct advantage in physical aspects like the dwarves or beastmen. Not as smart and crafty as the Palams, nor magically gifted like the elves. If not for the memory of his past life as Estilon, the Spirit King, he would have been just an ordinary boy. One who would most likely have died in the hands of that red dragon. I'll aim to be perfect in all aspects, so that I will have no weakness to exploit. He wasn't just aiming to regain his former strength as Estilon, but to surpass it. This must be the guild. By the time the guild opened, Judas was already there, stepping inside and looking for a receptionist. He chose the shorter line, and before long it was his turn. "I would like to register as an adventurer." He said this to the beautiful receptionist with long red hair, belonging to the werewolf race. Rose Fanad looked Judas up and down, her eyes almost devoid of emotion. She noticed how young he was inside, shaking her head. Another hot-blooded young man seeking death. Let me tell you, the dungeon is not a playground and should not be taken lightly. People die there all the time. Are you sure you want to proceed? Rose warned in a stern, tired voice. She was used to this. There was never a shortage of newcomers flocking to Rio, hoping to chase dreams. Unfortunately, very few came out alive. After witnessing so many deaths, Rose said these words out of habit, trying to discourage the foolish. Whether they listened or not had nothing to do with her. She did what she could. In the end, the choice was theirs. Judas looked into her eyes and already understood her story. Despite her indifferent mask, she cared somewhat about others' lives, though she had long been desensitized. Yes, I am sure. I've dealt with monsters in my home village and I've been trained. Judas didn't know why he felt the urge to reassure her. Maybe because he pitied her. Maybe because of something else. He didn't dwell on it. Rose saw the unwavering determination in his eyes. There was no naivety there, nor the innocent eagerness that most newcomers had. At least this one seems decent. She was slightly relieved, though her face betrayed nothing. Then, have you already joined a familia? Judas shook his head in response. Rose was not surprised and handed out some official documents. Please write your information on this paper. I'll bring you a list of familias that are currently recruiting. The procedure was quick, and Judas found himself impressed by Rose's professionalism. After you're accepted into a familia, I'll be your advisor. Unless your familia assigns one for you. When the paperwork was finished, Judas was about to leave, but out of the corner of his eye, he spotted the protagonist, Belle Crannel, speaking with another receptionist, a half-elf named Ina Toole. Belle felt a gaze on her back and turned, only to find no one there. I must be imagining things, she thought before resuming her conversation with Ina. I wasn't being stealthy, but her senses were sharper than I thought. Judas mused as he glanced at the paper in his hand containing a list of familias. Most of these are either low to mid-level factions. Other than Mayak, I don't recognize any of these names. He lost interest, shrugged, crumpled the paper into a ball, and tossed it into the trash. Chapter 13, The Benevolent Mistress. I don't really need to join a familia, but for appearance's sake, I might consider joining one. He thought to himself while the crumpled piece of paper went straight into the bin. But honestly, Judas wasn't all that opposed to joining a familia. He spent some time thinking it over. There was no need to rush such a life-changing decision. He took a leisurely stroll through the streets of Rio, taking in the sights unique only to the City of Heroes. By chance, his feet carried him toward Folkvanger, the home of the Freya familia. This place feels gloomy. Judas noticed the sudden change in atmosphere, but he didn't dwell on it. He stopped in front of a large gate, his eyes catching on a certain symbol and emblem depicting the profile of a Valkyrie. Is this place? His senses screamed a warning. He jumped back, just as someone came crashing down onto the exact spot where he had been standing. Ack! For a moment, Judas thought the poor soul had died on impact, until he heard a groan of pain escape their lips. Hey, you alright? Back off. He approached, only to get snapped at. Miraculously, the person managed to stand, then vaulted over the gate like it was nothing. Judas blinked twice before shrugging his shoulders. I'm guessing that was the Freya familia. He resumed walking forward. No one in their right mind would join a familia filled with people like that. An environment full of crazy people competing for the attention of their goddess. His thoughts didn't linger on the Freya familia for long before shifting back to the previous topic. I think there's no harm in getting a Felna myself. With his current abilities as a mage, obtaining a Felna had always seemed redundant. Judas hadn't accepted one because he believed he didn't need it. It was only now that he changed his mind. If he was going to live in the world of Danmachi, especially in Rio, he might as well experience the full package. Which familia should I join? He mulled it over, his thoughts drifting to the various familias operating in the city. Hephaestus, Ganesha, Hestia, maybe Demeter. Truthfully, it didn't matter which he chose. The Felna worked the same, no matter the god. A trustworthy god or goddess, and reliable familia members. That's enough. Finally, he made his decision. Let's go with the Loki Familia. That's the fun option. Not only are they one of the strongest familias in the city, but they're also home to some of my favorite characters. His thoughts drifted to a certain green-haired high elf who deserved more screen time. He admitted that kind of woman was his type. Let's just go back to the inn for now. I'm hungry. On his way back, however, he stumbled upon a familiar and iconic location, the Hostess of Fertility. Maybe I'll eat here instead. He pushed open the doors, greeted by a silver-haired waitress. Welcome, dear Custo. The waitress, Sir Flova, stopped mid-sentence when her eyes landed on him. She froze, staring as though she had just discovered a priceless treasure. This must be Sir. But why is she looking at me like that? Judas frowned, puzzled by her behavior. Sir? What's wrong with you? Another waitress, the brown-haired Lenoir Faust, waved a hand in front of Sir's face. Nia? Is Sir all right, Nia? The cheerful cat girl, Anya Fromel, leaned in front of Sir, tilting her head cutely. The rest of the waitresses, and even some customers, turned to watch the scene unfold. What are you doing? Get your lazy asses back to work. A thunderous voice boomed, shattering the air. The fierce tavern owner, Mamma Mia, barked loud enough to break windows. Sir jolted back to reality. I am sorry. I don't know what came over me. She rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Sir. Your nose. It's bleeding. The blonde elf, Ryu, pointed at Sir in alarm. Sir touched her lips, only to find blood on her fingers. I need a towel. She quickly covered her nose and dashed to the back, disappearing from sight. Judas just sat there, staring in disbelief. With Sir gone, every eye in the tavern turned toward him, silently asking what on earth just happened. Can I get a table? Running away would only make him look suspicious, so he forced himself to stay put. Right this way. Lenoir led him to an empty seat and handed him a menu. Slowly, the tavern settled back into its usual rhythm. So, you're the kid who gave one of my girls a brain malfunction? A shadow loomed over him. Turning his head, Judas found himself face to face with the towering frame of Mamma Mia, staring down at him with sharp eyes. She's strong, but not as strong as that woman who follows Belle. Her aura pressed against him, suffocating, but Judas remained unbothered. If he got scared by this, that would be too pathetic. I'm just as confused as you are. Maybe she froze after seeing my handsome face. His tone was flat, impossible to read, though inwardly he cringed. That was cringe. Why did I say that? The surrounding waitresses and customers who had been eavesdropping all thought the same thing simultaneously. He's dead. Mamma Mia blinked in disbelief. She hadn't even been trying to intimidate him, yet she knew her presence alone usually reduced newcomers to trembling messes. But this boy? No. I was wrong. This kid isn't some naive newcomer. She narrowed her eyes, finally sensing what her instincts had missed earlier. Beneath his youthful exterior was a subtle yet threatening aura, danger, disguised as a boy. Oh, Freya. Don't tell me you've taken an interest in this one already. He's no puppy. He's a wolf. Her lips curled into a grin. Ha ha ha. Mamma Mia roared with laughter. You've got guts, kid. I like it. She turned her head and bellowed. May. Prepare the biggest, most expensive dish we've got. This skinny boy needs meat on his bones. I'll get back at you somehow, kid. She grinned to herself. From the kitchen window, the chef May stuck her head out and saluted. Right away, Mamma Mia. But I didn't order anything yet. Judas felt his headache coming on. Ha? What are you saying, kid? The chef's already cooking. Are you going to refuse the dish a cute girl made just for you? Mamma Mia smirked with mischief. Judas glanced at his pouch. I barely have enough, but it doesn't matter. I'll become an adventurer tomorrow and start earning Valis. Resigned, he let it go. Soon, Seer returned with the food he hadn't ordered and placed it before him. Here you go, and I'm sorry for the trouble earlier. She bowed apologetically. Judas looked from the food back to her. It's fine. Is your nose okay? I'm all right. Thank you for your concern. She smiled brightly. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Seer Flova. What's your name, cutie? Her teasing tone was meant to fluster him, but Judas responded with the same flatness as before. Judas Spade. Nice to meet you. Then he turned back to his food and started eating. Seer blinked, a little disappointed. Judas Spade, what a nice name. Tell me, what do you do for a living? Before he could answer, Mamma Mia's sharp voice cut in, making Seer flinch. What are you slacking off for? Get back to work. Mama, come on. Just 5 more minutes. One look from Mamma Mia shut her down. All right. Seer sighed, turning back to Judas. I'll see you later, cutie. He gave her a glance, then went back to eating. Still, he could feel several pairs of eyes on his back, subtle, but not enough to escape his senses. Rio, especially, seemed to be trying to get closer. Is there a problem? The sudden question caught Ryu off guard. She stiffened, turned her head away quickly. Nothing, enjoy your meal. She all but ran off. Judas shrugged and finished his food quickly. He left the tavern soon after, much to Seer's disappointment. That guy was interesting, Nya. Anya purred, finger to her chin. He didn't even flinch when Mamma Mia confronted him. That takes courage, or maybe he was just stupid. Lunoir said with a nod. His butt looked so cute and delicious. I just want to slurp it up. Chloe chimed in with a lewd grin. Chapter 14, Meeting Loki. After finishing his meal at the Hostess of Fertility, Judas asked some people for directions to the Loki Familia's home. Are you trying your luck to get yourself recruited into the Loki Familia, kid? An adventurer asked, eyeing Judas up and down as though weighing him with his gaze. Judas could tell he was being judged, but paid it no mind. Yeah, it is one of the top familias in the city after all. Judas replied nonchalantly. Heh, then you're unlucky. The Loki Familia just left on an expedition. You're too late. Judas raised his brows at the unexpected answer. What bad timing. He cursed his luck and turned back toward the inn he was staying at. The sky was beginning to dim, night slowly creeping in after he had spent the day touring around the city. I know Hephaestus is a blacksmithing familia, but it doesn't hurt to give it a try. He checked his money pouch as he walked and frowned. I'm running out of Valis already. Deep in thought, Judas didn't notice until too late that he had bumped into someone. The person stumbled and fell flat on the ground. A familiar red-haired, flat-chested goddess. Loki? The red hair, the slit eyes, the flat chest, a recognizable set of features that could only belong to one person he knew. Judas noticed the way people subtly avoided her, and it wasn't just because she was a drunkard mumbling in the streets. Everyone in the city knew who she was, the patron goddess of the second most formidable force in Orario. Avoiding her was the same as avoiding trouble. Hey! Hiccup! Watch! Hiccup! Where you're going? Hiccup! Loki said with a drunken face, still sitting on the ground. I wonder if I can use this as a chance to get into the Loki Familia. Judas glanced at the empty bottle in her hand, the smell of alcohol radiating from her. Are you all right, goddess? He offered his hand. Hiccup! Loki stared at it and suddenly grinned. Catch me, boy. Before Judas could react, Loki jumped into his arms, laughing like a lunatic. Jaya haha. Woohoo! What are you doing? Judas demanded, forced to carry Loki in a princess hold. He turned his face away slightly as the heavy stench of alcohol invaded his nose. "Come on, boy, take me back to the Twilight Manor." She ignored his question and pointed in a random direction, being rowdy as ever. Judas felt the urge to just drop her on the ground, but he restrained himself and started walking. "Hey, you're pretty strong for a kid without a falna. How old are you?" Even in her drunken state, Loki had noticed his strength. As a goddess, she could tell instantly that he didn't have a falna yet. "I'm 15 this year," Judas replied, trying not to breathe in her alcoholic fumes. "Oh, look at these muscles you've got. Not bad." Loki groped his biceps and pecs through his clothes. Though hidden by his baggy outfit, Judas's body was actually well built, fit, and balanced with muscle in the right places. "Goddess, please stop that." Judas spoke bluntly, locking eyes with her slitted gaze. "Oh, come on. A beautiful lady like myself touching you, and you don't get excited? You're a healthy teenage boy, aren't you?" Loki teased with a shit-eating grin. "I'm going to drop you if you don't stop." His tone was flat as Loki's chest, but his eyes made it clear he wasn't joking. All right. Just take me home, and I promise you'll get a reward." Judas sighed in relief and carried her the rest of the way. After a few turns, they finally arrived at the gates of the Twilight Manor. "Yoo-hoo! Open up!" The guards were surprised to see their goddess being carried around by a boy they'd never seen before. "Right away." But they opened the gates without hesitation. They weren't worried about Judas being an intruder, such was the confidence of the Loki familia. "You can put me down now." Judas didn't hesitate. He set her on her feet, then sniffed himself and almost retched. "Now the smell is stuck on my clothes. I have to hurry back and wash it off. I guess this is goodbye, Goddess Loki." He turned to leave, but Loki grabbed his shirt from behind. "Come inside, boy. Let me give you a falna." Judas's eyes widened. Slowly, he turned back to look at her. "Really?" His voice nearly cracked, which made Loki giggle. He. "Did you think I didn't notice? You approached me with the intention of joining my familia, didn't you? Well, I found you interesting enough, so why not?" She grinned as if saying, "I can see right through you." Judas gave a wry smile. "I almost forgot. Loki acts all goofy, but she's the goddess of mischief, deception, and trickery. She's sharp. She can see through simple schemes with ease. Are you coming or not?" Loki had already walked past the gates and beckoned him. Judas smiled faintly. Relief washed over him as he stepped inside the base of the Loki familia. Except for a few guards, this place feels empty, like an abandoned house. The silence was so heavy that only the sound of their footsteps echoed in the halls. Before long, they reached Loki's room. Her face was still red from drinking too much. "Come inside and remove your shirt. Oh, and watch your step." When she opened the door, Judas saw glass bottles scattered everywhere. What a mess! The stench made him wrinkle his nose. He quickly removed his shirt, sat on the bed, and turned his back to her. Loki pricked her finger with a needle. Because she was drunk, more blood spilled out than necessary. She clicked her tongue at the stain on her bedsheets. "I'll have to get someone to clean this up." Judas glanced at the disaster of a room. "You can tolerate this mess but not blood on your bed?" He wondered how her brain worked, but his thoughts vanished the moment he felt a mysterious power entering his body. "This is it." A few drops of Loki's ichor fell onto his back, forming the tattoo of a clown, a variation of the Loki familia emblem. Loki looked at the blue holographic display in the divine language floating above his back. At first, she didn't expect much. To her, Judas was just an interesting kid. Nothing more. But the next moment, her narrow eyes flew open in shock. "What the heck is this?" Her scream echoed through the room. A whimsical decision on her part had led her to discover a treasure. The look of astonishment did not leave her face for a long time. Chapter 15, Loki's Fortune. Loki, who seemed to have shaken off her drunken state, was left baffled when she looked at the status sheet of the boy in front of her. Judas Spade. LV1. STR, I0. End I. 0. Dex, I. 0. AGI high. 0. Mag, I0. Skills frowny face the blessing of the world tree. Elemental Master. Eternal Persistence. The Venerated One. Magic. Otherworld Thaumaturgy 5th tier. Ahaha, a treasure. I just found a great treasure. After her initial shock subsided, Loki laughed like she had just won the lottery. Let me see. Judas grabbed the sheet from her hands and studied it carefully. Compared to Loki's excitement, he kept his composure as his eyes trailed down the list of skills and magic. The Venerated One? What is this? He was clueless about this particular skill, but he had a clear idea about the rest. The Blessing of the World Tree and Elemental Master, these should be the original powers of Estilon, the Spirit King. With this, he confirmed that his past life could influence his fauna. But what caught his attention most was Otherworld Thaumaturgy 5th tier. Looks like my abilities as a mage were listed by the fauna, condensed into one magic slot. Then his eyes stopped at the last ability. Eternal Persistence. From its name alone, I can already guess what it does. While Judas silently examined the sheet, Loki noticed his lack of surprise. Oh. Look at you, calm and composed. You do know most adventurers start out with an empty fauna, right? No skills, no magic. Oh really? Wow, I must be special then. His words sounded prideful, but his flat tone made them come across more like dry sarcasm, which made Loki's ears twitch with amusement. Don't get a big head, boy. You're still level 1. There are plenty of adventurers in this city who can beat you bloody. When Judas stayed silent, Loki assumed she had curbed some arrogance and continued with a grin. I'll tell you the descriptions of your skills and magic. Listen up. She picked up a different piece of paper. The descriptions are here. I wrote them separately, otherwise your status sheet would get too clogged. Judas finished putting his shirt back on, and Loki began to read. The Blessing of the World Tree. Starting off hot, huh? The user is blessed by the ancient world tree, granting enhanced vitality, faster recovery, and a deep connection to nature. Wounds heal quicker, mana flows more smoothly, and natural energies respond favorably to their presence. If the elves find out about this, even I wouldn't know how they'd react. Loki opened her slit eyes wider, staring at Judas with a probing gaze. Mind telling me how a human like you came into contact with the world tree? Judas stayed silent, knowing gods could detect lies. They stared at each other for a long minute until Loki relented with a click of her tongue. TCH, fine. If you don't want to tell me, just say so. She continued reading. Elemental Master. Enhances all elemental spells by 200% effectiveness. Negates elemental weaknesses. She glanced at Judas, who showed no reaction, then pressed on. Eternal Persistence. Determination that never fades. A tame one compared to the rest, but still a solid skill. The Venerated One, whoa, this one's a heavy hitter. The one who has received the world's favor and the blessing of the heavens. They are the pinnacle of potential, the harbinger of destiny, and a soul unbound by mortal constraints. To witness their rise is to know that the impossible is merely an illusion. Looks like you're loved by the world, kid. I've never seen someone so blazed over by their own skill before. Chuckling, Loki read the final entry. Otherworld Thaumaturgy 5th tier. The accumulation of the user's magical knowledge from another world, 213 out of 13,250 spells unlocked. For just a moment, her playful expression vanished, replaced by sharp seriousness. Judas noticed it, brief though it was. Over 13,000 spells. Magic from another world. Loki gently set the paper on her desk before fixing her gaze on him. Now you're making me even more curious. Just who are you, kid? Judas stayed calm. Who knows? Maybe in the future you'll find out. Since Loki loved to tease him, he decided on a little payback. You're really playing with fire, acting all mysterious with me, boy. Loki smirked, then waved her hand dismissively. Fine, keep your secrets. There's only one thing I have to say. She leaned forward. Welcome to the Loki Familia, kid. She didn't push further. Everyone had secrets. She'd uncover his eventually. Sooner or later, I'll learn everything about you. I can't wait until Finn and the others get back. The looks on their faces when they see this kid's status will be priceless. The thought made Loki chuckle to herself. Right. Now that you're in my familia, you can have the spare room at the end of this hallway. Pack your stuff from wherever you were staying and meet me tomorrow morning. Loki shifted back into her proper goddess demeanor. Okay. Thank you for the hospitality, Goddess Loki. Yeah. You can go now, I'm tired. She yawned, slamming her head onto her pillow. Judas gave a small smile as he closed the door behind him. Welcome to the Familia, kid. The guards at the gate greeted him warmly. Thank you. Judas returned the smile out of courtesy. On his way back to the inn to retrieve his belongings, he ran into a very distraught Belle Crannel. He had seen her several times today, searching for a familia. Looks like she failed, just like in the anime. The original protagonist had faced rejection after rejection before finally meeting Hestia. Don't worry, Belle. Hestia will find you soon. With that thought, he wished her luck and continued back to the Loki Familia's base. Is this where I'm staying? Looks more like a storage room than a bedroom. The small space was crammed with stacked boxes, but at least it had a bed. It's not ideal, but livable. By morning, Judas had prepared himself and waited outside Loki's door. She didn't specify a time. I guess it won't hurt to knock. Before he could, Loki's voice came from inside. You can come in, boy. Judas paused, then entered. Inside, he saw Loki and the guard from yesterday. I'm sure you already know, but the Familia left on an expedition yesterday. Bad timing for you, kid. Ren here will guide you and answer your questions. She gestured to the middle-aged rabbit demi-human standing by her side, the gatekeeper of the Loki Familia. Don't worry, goddess. I'll make sure the newbie's ready and doesn't die an early death in the dungeon. Although plain and rough-looking, Ren was still a level 2 adventurer. He had been forced into this position after taking an arrow to the knee, but his experience was invaluable. I am Judas. Please take care of me, senior. Though older mentally, Judas showed respect, since Ren had seniority within the Familia. I'm Ren Satoshi, level 2. Don't hesitate to ask if you're curious about anything. Loki grinned at their exchange. Looks like you two get along already. Ren, take him to the armory and get him a proper weapon. Those shabby daggers won't cut it. Judas glanced at the short twin daggers on his waist. Though he didn't use them, they were mementos of his parents, his mother's adventuring weapons. Rusty, worn, and weathered, but precious. These daggers have sentimental value, goddess. I can't just throw them away. Loki frowned. Kid, the dungeon isn't a joke. If your weapon breaks mid-battle, that's game over no matter how talented you are. Don't underestimate it. She realized then Judas was a little arrogant, not taking the dungeon as seriously as he should. All talented children of the lower world are like this. I'll have to guide him properly or else he'll die before his talent can bloom. I'm not telling you to throw them away. If those rusty things matter to you, we'll get them repaired, but you'll pay the expense. For now, I strongly advise you to use an actual weapon on your first dungeon run. She spoke with a serious expression, no longer the jester, but the head of a familia. I have no disagreement with your arrangement. Judas could feel the care behind her sternness, and he didn't object. At that moment, he was certain he didn't regret joining her familia. Chapter 16, Registered Adventurer. Loki is surprisingly more capable than I thought. From the anime, she always seemed more like a perverted old man than someone dependable. Judas was now being guided by Ren to the armory to pick his new weapon and armor. You can choose anything that fits you, but don't bite off more than you can chew. Only take what you need. Ren reminded him as he opened the armory door. Judas stepped inside and frowned at how sparse it looked. Ah, right. The expedition took most of the good stuff. What's left are just spares. Ren smacked his forehead when he realized the situation. Well, better than nothing. Judas adopted a positive attitude and inspected the nearly emptied racks. The usual cliché of a protagonist stumbling upon a hidden legendary weapon didn't happen. That would only make the Loki familia look incompetent for not realizing such a treasure was sitting in their vault. Ignoring the magic staves and wands Loki had intended for him, Judas instead chose a standard spear and lightweight leather armor. Good quality. Weight's perfect for me. Unlike swords, spears have reach and versatility, ideal for an unpredictable environment like the dungeon. The equipment wasn't special, but it was decent. He swung the spear in practice arcs, getting used to its balance. Estilon never trained with a spear, but he fought countless spear wielders. And Father's lessons are proving more useful than I thought. By no means an expert, Judas only knew the basics, but it was enough. He was satisfied. Looks like you had some training, newbie. Not bad. Ren praised him lightly, though in truth, he wasn't impressed. Compared to prodigies like Ace, Judas seemed merely above average. At least from Ren's perspective. He had no idea how monstrous Judas really was, though that wasn't his fault. Loki wouldn't reveal Judas' status to a lower-ranked member so casually. That kind of information was too important to share. I'm ready. After testing his gear, Judas was eager to enter the dungeon. Good. I'll be accompanying you on your first dive. It's mandatory, straight orders from Loki. No objections. I don't mind. Judas wasn't bothered. He had no reason to hide his abilities. Just from receiving the Falna, a person can go from level 0 to level 1. I want to see what kind of strength I gained from the Falna alone. He had long studied how the god's blessing worked. The Falna wasn't just a tool for supernatural abilities. It unlocked the latent potential hidden deep within mortals, giving them a key to access it. The Falna collected Excelia, which converted into status points. Excelia came from training or slaying monsters. The 5 main parameters, strength, agility, endurance, dexterity, and magic, could all be raised by performing specific actions targeting them. Lifting heavy loads could raise strength. Taking damage improved endurance. Every struggle forged growth. But there was something unique about the Falna compared to other power systems. The quality of Excelia depends on the effort and struggle involved. A level 6 could slay a million level 1 goblins and gain nothing. Without real danger, there's no growth. That's why higher level adventurers progress slower. Unless they risk their lives in the deeper floors, they'll never again experience the rapid growth they once had as beginners. By now, Judas and Ren had reached the guild entrance. But I'm different. I'm only level 1, yet my foundation is already unprecedented. Just how much will I grow in a single day? The thought excited him. But first, procedure, he had to report to his advisor. Mr. Spade, I see you've succeeded in joining a familia. Rose observed Ren walking beside Judas, along with his new equipment. Yeah. I was lucky enough to join the Loki familia. Judas' tone was calm, but his words struck like thunder to everyone nearby. That kid joined Loki familia? The familia of giant slayers? What's so special about him? Whispers spread like wildfire through the guild hall, envious eyes turning toward Judas. He ignored them and followed Ren to Rose, who raised a slightly surprised brow. You joined Loki familia? That's good to hear. Hand me your status sheet so the guild can officially register you as an adventurer. Rose sounded relieved. Though she put on a tough front, she cared for the adventurers she advised. With Loki Familia backing him, his survival chances rise considerably. There were no guarantees even Loki's people had suffered deaths, but at least Judas was less likely to die from rookie mistakes. The early stages were always the deadliest. Most beginners underestimated the dungeon until it swallowed them whole. Information and guidance were priceless. That was the true strength of joining an established familia. Having veterans and seniors show you the ropes were valuable experiences. Guild advisors could help, but their support was limited since most of them weren't adventurers themselves. Here you go. Judas handed Rose his status sheet without hesitation. She noticed the skills and magic section had been neatly torn away, leaving only his parameters, level, and Loki Familia seal. Did he get a skill? Rose raised her brow in suspicion but didn't pry further and quickly processed the paperwork. It didn't take long before she clapped her hands and as her gaze landed on him. Congratulations on becoming an adventurer, Judas Spade. Would you like me to remain your advisor, or has your familia already assigned you one? Judas blinked. Am I seeing things? For just a split second, he thought he saw a smile flicker across her lips before it vanished. Almost as if he imagined it. He glanced at Run, who shrugged. The goddess said the choice is yours. Hearing this, Judas extended his hand. It's a pleasure to work with you, Miss Fannet. Take care of me. I promise to advise you well. The red-haired wolf demi-human and the human boy shook hands. Chapter 17, The Dungeon. The tower looks even bigger up close. He looked up and squinted his eyes. For a tower of this scale to exist with the level of technology present in Danmachi, Judas was impressed. I guess having the power of the Felna and the wisdom of the gods made it easier. Speaking of Felna, to make this a challenge, I should turn it off for now. He touched his chest and mumbled silently. Seal. The shine of his mana core and the stars orbiting it dimmed greatly. Judas felt the sudden, steep decline of strength. Mana stopped circulating through his body as his level dropped step by step. From 5th tier to 4th. From 4th to 3rd. From 3rd to 2nd. From 2nd to 1st. And finally, from 1st tier to that of a normal human. Right now, Judas was a bona fide level 1 adventurer. It feels strange, not having mana in my body. Like my energy's been drained and I've suddenly been weighed down with a ton of bricks. Kid, mind telling me if you got a skill or magic before we head in? The two had already reached the dungeon entrance. You'll see for yourself later. Judas answered casually before taking his first step into the labyrinth of monsters. The entrance to the dungeon was located on the first underground floor of Babel. At its center lay a massive 10-meter-wide hole that led straight into the dungeon's depths. The circular chamber was supported by evenly spaced columns, and above them stretched a breathtaking azure mural of the sky that nearly looked real. Encircling the room were gentle stairs that spiraled downward, guiding adventurers into the unknown. The noise of the crowd slowly faded as they descended. TCH, acting all mysterious. Suit yourself. Ren clicked his tongue. To him, Judas was just putting on airs to impress him. He probably doesn't even have one. He exhaled loudly through his nose. A skill or magic at the start was a tremendous advantage and the mark of someone truly talented. Judas paid him no mind, more focused on how deep he should go and how much growth he could wring out of a single run. For now, I'll consider this a test run. He wasn't planning to go all out yet. That would only force him into the deep floors. His ears twitched at the faint sound of stone shifting within the walls. Here it comes. A pack of kobolds burst forth, surrounding them. Neither Judas nor Ren so much as flinched. A whole group right off the bat. Your luck must be terrible, kid. Judas spun his spear, cutting them down as soon as they closed in. Not even a bead of sweat formed on his brow. Not bad. Run muttered, watching his form. He gave a small nod. The monsters of the first floor, kobolds and goblins, were threats to ordinary folk. But for adventurers blessed with Felna, they were little more than fodder. For the upper floors, I don't even need to bother with magic. Time passed. Judas speared another goblin cleanly, relying only on his body and weapon. You're handling your first dungeon run better than most rookies. After seeing this, the fourth floor shouldn't be too hard for you. Let's make that our goal for now. Ron suggested. Judas nodded, and the two pressed on until they found the stairs leading further down. On the second floor, a new monster emerged, dungeon lizards. Brown quadrupeds with suction discs on their feet, they crept along walls and leapt to ambush prey. For Judas, their tricks were laughable. His sharp senses caught them instantly, and his spear tore through their stomachs without effort. He didn't even glance at their bodies as they crumbled into black ash, leaving behind small magic stones. Ren, relegated to supporter, collected them wordlessly. The third and fourth floors went the same. Kobolds, goblins, lizards. All fell swiftly beneath his spear. Judas wiped the sweat from his forehead as he kept moving. Honestly, without my powers, I thought this would be harder. He could feel fatigue creeping in, but the monsters still failed to touch him. With nothing more than a fresh Felna and a spear, Judas had conquered the fourth floor within an hour. Behind him, Ren stared at Judas' steady stride. He's skilled. Astute. It was his most honest impression so far. Calm as a still lake. Alert to hidden danger. Composed even in battle. Traits that rookies simply did not have. He's experienced. He wasn't lying when he said he's fought monsters before. The upper floors were too easy for him. But Ron knew if Judas breezed through his first run without any real danger, he might grow complacent. And complacency killed. He'd seen it too many times, talented adventurers cut down by arrogance. It's better he learns difficulty now before it becomes habit. Let's keep going. Ron urged as they descended to the fifth floor. I thought I needed at least G-rank stats to explore these floors. Judas spoke, though his feet kept moving. That rule applies to normal adventurers. With your skill, the fourth floor's hardly a challenge. And besides, Loki ordered me to see where your limit lies. Judas stayed silent. New monster. He narrowed his eyes as something spawned ahead. A frog-like beast with one massive eye. Frog shooter. Its tongue is a deadly weapon. This is the floor where a lot of rookies start dying, so be careful, kid. Ren warned. The frog's tongue lashed out like a whip. Judas sidestepped just as it slammed into the ground, scattering dirt and pebbles. The strike had enough force to shatter bones like twigs. Now this is more like it. A grin tugged at Judas' lips. Those kobolds and goblins didn't stir his blood. But this was enough to make his heart pump, even if it was just for a second. It's going to strike again. He needed only a glance to read its habits. The tongue lashed out once more. Judas predicted its aim for his torso and had already slipped out of range before the attack began. The frog's one eye widened in shock. Judas' spear pierced straight through its head. Let's go. He walked on, leaving Ren frozen in place, staring. Chapter 18, The Dungeon's Wrath. This kid, how long can you keep going? Ren questioned himself after seeing Judas slay another group of monsters. Initially, he hadn't expected much. Just keep an eye on the newbie to make sure he didn't die on his first dungeon exploration and then report to Loki. But the deeper they went, the more speechless Ren became. At this point, the two had already stepped into the ninth floor. The ninth floor wasn't much to a level 2 like him, but for most level 1 adventurers, soloing here was nothing short of suicidal. The monsters on this floor were stronger, more aggressive, and spawned in greater numbers. It was generally recommended that level 1 adventurers have at least E-rank status in their basic abilities before coming here. He just received his Falna yesterday, with all his basic stats at 0, yet he's already surpassed most level 1s in the city. Just from pure combat effectiveness alone. Ren clenched his jaw. This kid, he's definitely pushing himself. Let's see how long he can hold on. Even so, his guard stayed raised. The dungeon was never merciful, and complacence was a poison. It's been several hours and I'm barely making it through the 9th floor. Judas thrust his spear into the head of a purple moth, the monster shrieking before dissolving into ash. Out of all the enemies so far, needle rabbits, killer ants, and war shadows, the purple moth was by far the most troublesome. It wasn't stronger in raw power, but its ability to fly and spread poisonous powder made it a persistent threat. The powder didn't kill instantly, but prolonged exposure caused adventurers to weaken and collapse. Judas wiped sweat from his brow, feeling his body grow sluggish, his vision slightly blurred. I think I've been poisoned. His eyelids grew heavy, his movements slower. This is why abnormal resistance is such a popular choice for a development ability among adventurers. He could dispel this poison easily, he knew dozens of recovery spells. A single surge of Estalon's true power could wipe the venom from his body instantly. I think can even dispel this with my skill, blessing of the world tree. But he had made a promise. For today, he would only rely on his Falna and himself. So this is my limit without Estalon's help? Judas knelt on one leg, spear braced against the ground. Looks like the purple moth's poison finally got to you. Run approached from the side, a small smile tugging at his lips. I didn't bring a potion with me, never thought we'd end up going all the way to the 9th floor. He patted Judas on the shoulder and helped him stand. You did well on your first try, kid. I basically had no chance to intervene and save your ass. Our familia has obtained another genius. Though no longer an active adventurer, Rin felt genuine pride. With someone like Judas, their familia's future grew brighter. Thanks, Judas muttered, though his thoughts raced on whether to continue. Maybe tomorrow. He wasn't desperate to raise his power through the Falna. Compared to his original strength, it was still minuscule. This was more of a curiosity. A learning experience. The 9th floor, on his first exploration, all by himself. He's already stronger than some level 1s who've been at this for months. If I hadn't seen it myself, I never would have believed it. Ran marveled, though he kept the thought unspoken. Praise could only inflate arrogance, and arrogance in the dungeon was death. On the way back, Ren handled the monsters while Judas followed quietly. Ren assumed Judas was still weakened by poison, but in truth, Judas was already back to peak condition. He said nothing, letting Ren take the lead. He must be bored, watching me the whole time. Let him have his fun. By the time they reached the 4th floor, Judas caught sight of a goblin sneaking from the shadows, aiming to ambush Ren. I guess I can help him out. Now that I have that skill. A thin disk of wind materialized at his fingertip. No chant. No mana. No spell. Just pure elemental control. As Spirit King, Estalon had never needed to be a mage to command the elements. Judas, his inheritor, could do the same. Though until now it was too weak to matter in combat. But with Elemental Master, even the smallest elemental attack became lethal. The disc whirled forward, cleanly severing the goblin's head. Estalon's power inside me keeps growing, slow but steady. Still weaker than my true spells, but progress nonetheless. His thoughts drifted to the memories he had inherited. I can't believe Estalon was taught by the first mage, the supreme sage herself. I wonder what she's doing now. Judas didn't realize the danger he had just sparked. Unaware that using Estalon's power inside the dungeon, however briefly, had stirred something ancient. Suddenly, a crushing sense of crisis flooded his heart. A wailing cry, full of horror and anguish, echoed inside his mind. What was that? Judas shouted, sweat trailing down his face. Kid? What's wrong? Run turned, but his words fell silent. The dungeon trembled. Small vibrations spread from the walls and floor, growing stronger with each second. Cracks spidered along the stone until whole chunks collapsed around them. Roher! It came. A roar so overwhelming it shattered the air itself. The sound reverberated through their chests, rattling their bones, making their ears ring in agony. The ground trembled as if the earth itself recoiled from the voice. For a heartbeat, all was silence. Every adventurer froze, breath caught in their throats, as if time itself had stopped. Then, run! Ren grabbed Judas' wrist and pulled him forward, sprinting at full speed. But the danger had already arrived. Monsters emerged from the dungeon walls, but these were no ordinary spawns. From the shadows, an ash-colored lizard leapt, its claws slashing across Ren's torso. Blood splattered as his shirt turned crimson. Ack! Ren staggered, countering with his dagger, but the beast dodged effortlessly, shattering the blade between its teeth. A guttural noise tore from its throat as more creatures closed in. Judas' eyes narrowed. These weren't normal monsters. The goblins were larger, gray-skinned, covered in glowing tattoos. The kobolds were obsidian black, magma dripping from their maws, scorching the ground beneath their feet. Irregular monsters. Why are there so many? Ren pulled his sword, his stance tightening. Sweat dripped from his brow as every instinct screamed of danger. Damn it, the one time I forgot to bring potions. Kid, I'm sorry, but we might not make it out alive. His voice cracked with desperation, clutching his bleeding wound. Judas scanned the monsters, then looked at Ren's bleeding chest. Unseal. A calm voice cut through the chaos. The air itself rippled as a crushing pressure descended. The irregular monsters were slammed into the ground, pinned by invisible force. I was planning to take it easy, since it was my first dungeon dive. Ren turned, eyes wide in disbelief. Kid. Judas raised his spear, his calm expression hardening. Change of plans. Chapter 19, Retaliation. Something is wrong. The dungeon's anguished screaming and the violent tremors. I don't remember this happening in the story. The mutated monsters spawning everywhere. Even if this was an alternate universe, there was no reason for this to happen. There was one instance. That one time where Hestia released her godly powers inside the dungeon and caused the Black Goliath to appear. This seems similar. A reaction that occurs when the dungeon rejects someone's presence. There shouldn't be any reason for a god or goddess to go inside the dungeon at this time. Only two possibilities entered his mind. Either a god entered the dungeon secretly, or it is reacting to me. Then realization struck. The spirit king Estilon, born from the world tree, was in existence similar to a god. Even after reincarnation, traces of his power still lingered. His will lived on through his next incarnation, Judas Spade. How could I forget? Estilon's power is comparable to the divine power of the gods. The dungeon must have sensed that. He hoped his speculation was wrong, because if not, I screwed up. He bit his lip, cursing himself. I will fix this. With an outstretched arm, Judas summoned forth dozens of sharp spikes from the ground. Screech! Every monster around them was killed instantly, torn apart without resistance. He didn't even care about destroying the valuable drop items. Ren's eyes widened in shock at the display. Huh? What? How? His mind couldn't process what had just happened. He stared at the decaying corpses, then at Judas, who simply pointed his index finger at him. Ren instinctively crossed his arms, a defensive motion born from confusion and instinct. Heal. A soothing light enveloped him. His wounds vanished as his body was covered in a soft green glow. Mr. Satoshi, return to the surface immediately. I will take care of the irregular monsters. Judas didn't wait for a response. His figure vanished from sight. Ren stood there dazed for a moment before shaking his head and rushing toward the surface. There were countless questions he wanted to ask, but he knew his role. He had to report this to the guild. Along the way, he passed corpses of monsters sprawled everywhere, slowly crumbling into black ash. The dungeon itself looked ravaged, its walls and floors scarred by massive destruction. This kid, what kind of freak did our goddess manage to pick up? He also passed by many adventurers, most of them in groups, either treating their wounds or running in panic toward the surface. In the corner of his eye, he spotted a corpse on the ground. He grit his teeth and looked away. There weren't just a few. Many adventurers had died during the incident. By the time he reached the surface, the outside world was already in chaos. Please, someone help. Ah! My legs! My legs! Let me in. My familia members are still in the dungeon. Judas, who had already exited earlier, stood surveying the scene. He glanced at the corpses being carried out, at the injured, and closed his eyes. His senses spread outward like sonar, piercing beneath the surface, deep into the dungeon. These irregular monsters, they're only appearing on the 1st to the 9th floors. He rushed back to the dungeon's entrance and stopped, staring at the ground. What is he doing? Hey you! Evacuate immediately! Can't you see there's an emergency? Onlookers shouted at him. Sinkhole! Judas ignored them. He slammed his fist into the ground, opening a massive hole that connected the first 9 floors together. Everyone who saw it was left speechless. Without hesitation, Judas jumped in. The 1st to 4th floors are already cleared. He landed directly on the 5th floor, immediately facing a group of irregular monsters ready to pounce. Judas didn't even glance at them. A simple swipe of his hand conjured several magic circles that summoned a horde of energy blades, tearing the monsters apart in an instant. Faster! He blitzed through the 5th floor, exterminating every monster in sight while casting recovery spells on adventurers he passed. Faster! 36 seconds. That was all it took to completely clear the 5th floor and rescue its survivors. An impressive feat, considering the dungeon's maze-like structure made navigation notoriously difficult. But for Judas, it was too slow. His mind drifted to the villagers he couldn't save, despite having the power to do so. Faster! 41 seconds. The 6th floor was cleared. Not a single monster remained. Faster! 44 seconds. The 7th floor was ravaged by an unstoppable storm. Even faster. 54 seconds. The 8th floor was left in ruins, unrecognizable from its original form. Judas's mind operated at blinding speed, performing dozens of spells every second. Meanwhile, deep within the 9th floor. Sacrifice yourself for us, you stupid Paolum. A rough, bald adventurer gripped a small figure by the neck. In a random corridor, a barricade held against an overwhelming horde of irregular monsters. The adventurers there were battered, injured, bleeding everywhere. They ignored the corpses around them and turned their frustration toward the weak supporter, intending to use her as bait. Cover yourself with monster lure. Make sure to get all their attention and die for us. The bald man barked the order while his comrades pulled items from their bags. Monster lure, an item that emitted a scent to attract monsters. A cruel, simple solution. No, please, don't kill me. Lily didn't do anything wrong. The Paolum supporter named Lily pleaded, tears running down her face as she realized their intent. Shut up! A useless supporter like you dares order adventurers around? The bald man snarled and punched her across the face. It hurts, please, stop. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. They threw her to the ground and doused her with monster lure. That should do it. Captain, the barricade won't hold much longer. A skinny adventurer shouted, panic written all over him. Throw her. Make sure you get a good distance. No. No. Don't do this. Her begging was ignored. No one cared. Their eyes held no remorse. Ah, adventurers. I hate you all. She closed her eyes. The pain dulled her mind, numbing her until resignation settled in. But seconds passed. Nothing happened. Ha! Hesitantly, she opened her eyes again. A boy stood before her, his back turned. The scenery around her had changed, completely obliterated. Are you all right? The boy turned, not caring about the utter destruction of the 9th floor. Though her vision blurred, she saw his face clearly. Instinctively, she knew he was her savior. Thank, why you? She whispered weakly, tears spilling down her cheeks before finally passing out. Chapter 20, The Venerated One Versus The Juggernaut. Judas looked at Lily, a character from the show, sleeping on the floor, then at the adventurers who had partied with her and were similarly knocked out. He snapped his fingers, and the unconscious Lily was carried by a gentle wind that rose through the massive sinkhole toward the surface. It wasn't just her. Other adventurers either passed out or too injured to move, were lifted away by his wind as well. As for the ones who tormented Lily, Judas ignored them. Since they didn't care about a person's life, why should he care about theirs? Thank goodness I was able to save her in time. Lilyruka Arde might not have been one of his favorite characters, but she was still an important side character in the anime. He felt relieved. It would have left a bad taste in his mouth if he'd caused her death. That was when his instincts began screaming at him. Something is coming. He could feel it faintly. A great amount of malice directed straight at him. There's a significant amount of energy being gathered on the 9th floor. The dungeon had marked him as a target. It feels like an immune system preparing to get rid of a virus. Rumble. Screech. The dungeon trembled, collapsing its already devastated floors even further. A low, guttural roar echoed through the labyrinth. Is that? His pupils shrank at the sight of the creature emerging from the shadows. A monster born of the dungeon's wrath. Its sleek, serpentine body gleamed like polished obsidian, its exoskeleton coiled with explosive potential. Razor-sharp claws carved deep grooves into the stone floor as it moved with predatory grace, crimson eyes glowing like embers of hate. This monster, it's different from the one I saw before. One glance was all it took. This was no ordinary monster. It was vengeance incarnate, a force summoned to punish those who defied the dungeon's sacred balance. The Juggernaut. The dungeon's ultimate enforcer. Not mindless rage, but a harbinger of devastation. And Judas was its prey. Normally, the Juggernaut's potential varied depending on the floor it emerged from. The deeper the floor, the stronger the monster. But this time, the dungeon made an exception. When dealing with Judas, it spared no expense in ensuring the virus was eliminated. The result? An irregular Juggernaut, something far stronger than anything it had ever produced. Hate you. The dungeon was agitated. Scary, that thing is scary. It has the stench of those hateful divine beings, but it's foreign. An anomaly. The dungeons will echoed in the creature's mind. An otherworldly being that should not exist. Kill, kill, kill. From the moment it was born, these whispers filled its head. Its mother's desire was clear. Eyes locked onto its prey. The Juggernaut lunged forward, too swift for the eye to follow. It weaved through the air with terrifying precision, each strike a death sentence, each motion a blur of calculated ferocity. Judas didn't know this creature's name, but he knew it was a real threat. This one is much stronger. He flared his body with magical power, reinforcing himself with mana to the absolute limit of what his body could endure. It's fast. He gritted his teeth, barely dodging the Juggernaut's claws. Blood dripped from his arm where the strike had grazed him. It wasn't deep enough to cripple his arm, but it was still the first time he had been injured by an enemy since reincarnating. Heal. The wound vanished without a trace. It's been a long time. An opponent worth taking seriously. The Juggernaut was already upon him again. Judas summoned a barrier, a sphere of energy surrounding him. The beast's massive jaws clamped down on it, dragging him along the ground and slamming him into the wall, leaving a massive crater. Cracks spread across his barrier. His figure blurred just as it shattered, and Judas reappeared floating a short distance away. A beast born of the dungeon's hatred. Let's see if you can withstand this. His voice was steady despite the pounding in his chest. Infernal barrage. He raised his arm. A cascade of fireballs rained down, streaking toward the juggernaut like meteors. They exploded on contact. Or so he thought. To his shock, the fireballs bounced back at him, like balls rebounding off the ground. His own attack was being reflected. The blast struck his barrier, filling the chamber with crimson and gold explosions. Magic reflection armor? TCH. I should have known. He frowned. No. Let me test it out. He drew a glowing sigil in the air, its geometric patterns hovering before him. Mana surged, pulled into the sigil like a vortex. Rune magic, arcane cataclysm. A blinding flash erupted, consuming the chamber in raw destructive force. The dungeon trembled. Stone cracked and fell as the spell disintegrated everything in its path. A force like that, unleashed on the surface, could level a mountain range. Is it smiling? For a moment, Judas thought he saw the juggernaut's jaws curl upward. The beast took the attack head-on. The ground beneath it vanished, swallowed by the blast. Is it working? Roar! The juggernaut howled, shaking Judas to his bones. No way! That armor won't break? Even that spell had been reflected. He braced himself, stacking multiple defensive spells as the reflected energy crashed down. The explosion rocked the dungeon. The shockwave was felt all the way to the surface. When the light faded, Judas stood panting, arms trembling. That was dangerous. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by falling debris. Then came the growl. The juggernaut rose from the rubble, groggy but still standing. A tiny crack marred its armored back. So much power, for so little damage. For anyone else, despair would have set in. But Judas only smiled. Ha! I knew it. Your reflection isn't perfect. He let out a weak laugh. For any other mage, you'd be a nightmare. Glowing lines surfaced across his skin as he cracked his knuckles. But physical impact resulting from the magic spell still hurts you. Physical boost. Sturdy body. Strengthening magic. Invigorate. Fortify. One by one, he layered every physical enhancement spell he knew. Which means your weakness is me. The juggernaut charged again, its speed incredible. But Judas moved with it, glowing with power. He dodged its claws and drove a kick straight into its skull, sending it crashing back a dozen meters. Fast, but predictable. His eyes locked on the crack in its head. Defeating you should give me plenty of Excelia. The juggernaut roared, lunging again with even greater speed. Is this the ultimate weapon you've sent to kill me? Ha! You stupid dungeon. Judas laughed. You have no idea who you're messing with. The beast's claws ripped into his chest, blood soaking his shirt. But he stood firm, defiance burning brighter than pain. Mark my words, one day. He gripped the monster's tail, muscles surging with mana. With a heave, he swung it through the air and smashed it into the wall, leaving a jagged hole. I'll turn this dungeon inside out, if it's the last thing I do. The chamber thundered with the clash of will and power. A battle that would end with either victory, or the collapse of the floor itself. That wraps up this part of What If a Venerated Soul Reincarnated in Danmachi World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.